Welcome everyone to the Cauldron of the Quantum Field, a cosmic tapestry where we will weave profound conversations of ancient wisdom and multi-dimensional magic with the quantum physics and energy architecture of the universe. This gathering is designed to hold space for language and stories to flow through that ignite our innate remembrance of what it means to be connected far beyond linear time and space, and what this means for us in our shared humanity as we co-create a future full of compassion, peace, and unity for all, from the unique strands that only we can bring to this divine and beautiful spiderweb of life. Kia ora, my name is Kathleen Nora Te Matatuhi Bauer, and as I welcome each of you in the audience to this incredible sacred space today, love to introduce Dr. Enolia Harris Pedro. Welcome, my dear friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you. Thank
Mm.
you. And for that beautiful introduction.
And everyone is in for such a beautiful treat. But let's get started as I read Enolia's amazing bio. So, International Peace Ambassadorship from the United Nations and an Ambassadorship for Human Rights from the World Assembly for Peace. Enolia is a respected grandmother, elder, and doctor, a modern-day medicine woman in energy medicine practicing in Africa. With decades of experience, she uses a holistic approach to guide individuals towards balanced health, integrating ancient traditions into modern wellness practices. Enolia offers classes and retreats on healing, self-mastery, dynamic meditations, and conscious mindset. Enolia is also the founder of the incredible new platform, Wombology, a membership and movement that amplifies the voices of women from cultures, disciplines, and industries all around the world. Through thought-provoking discussions, innovative perspectives, and transformative storytelling, leading together, birthing the next era of thought, energy, and possibility. Well, the title of this beautiful talk today just lights me up so much, as I know it will to all of you in the audience. It's called The Language of Light and Quantum Consciousness, Bridging Science and Spirituality. So I'm going to hand it over to you, beautiful Nolia. Please tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be sharing this transmission with us today.
Wow, that's a huge question to start off with, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the lovely introduction. My name is Grandmother Enolia, or Elder Enolia, or Dr. Enolia, whichever suits you. Grandmother is an affectionate term to say medicine woman. And it's an interesting way that our lives traverse how we get to where we are. And for me, it started off with a longing. Here I was doing what we're all, more or less groomed to do, working in corporate and, you know, going after our dreams, financially and um, materialistically. And there was a longing. There was a longing in my heart. There was a dissatisfaction of feeling just unfulfilled, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I remember my ex-husband now, but my ex-husband and our boys giving me a Mother's Day gift to go to see the 13 Indigenous grandmothers. And I knew of them, and 13 Indigenous grandmothers really means 13 Indigenous medicine women. And so I went to Omega Center in Rhinebeck, New York, and I was going to see these women, not knowing what to expect, how to expect it. But what I encountered was each one of these women executing their traditions in such a majestic way that it just touched my heart and changed my life forever. A little 4'2" Tibetan medicine woman that I was 300 feet away from made me feel like she had her hand on my heart and my stomach the whole time she was chanting and praying, like she was touching me. And I was 300 feet away, and it was like, what I was feeling, I could not deny. I could not deny from each one of these women and how they brought in the understanding and the knowledge of Creator to them, so much so that you felt it embraced in its fullness, just blew me away. And I was like, I have to get taught. I need to learn. I can't walk away from this. And so, in understanding that, I was like, I am not leaving this conference unless I have a teacher. And I saw them, they were all on stage, and they pointed out this one woman. She was in this beautiful white buckskin dress, and she was holding a serpent staff with this beautiful white hair, an elder. And I'm looking at this woman, they acknowledged her grandmother, Isabel Mawasaki. And I was like, that's it. She's the one. She's the one I'm going to approach. She's the one I want to teach me. And little did I know that my summoning up the confidence to go speak with her and ask her to teach me. And I didn't know what she's like, well, my girl, that's very nice that you want me to teach. What is it that you want to learn? And I didn't even think about what it was I wanted to learn. All I knew is that I just wanted to be taught by her. And she just was so gracious and so kind and so loving and thoughtful, but yet so statuesque and eloquent, and just, oh, she just embodied this beauty, but this feminine beauty. And in working in corporate, all I saw was the masculine alpha male woman who was going to go head to head with the man, act like the man, and put the clothes on like the man. I wanted that difference. And so I asked her if she would just teach me herbalism or just something. And she was like, well, my girl, if you're really serious, come up and see me sometime. She gave me her contact information. And 2 months later, I went 14 hours north to Canada from upstate New York to meet her. I spent the weekend with her, and she invited me to participate in pulling together a women's retreat, and or not even a women's retreat, just a retreat, but an indigenous retreat, my first one. And she was like, if you help me bring enough people, I will teach you. Well, I brought 22 women. I was going to get taught. And little did I know that that encounter 15 years later ended up her initiating me as a grandmother, as her peer, and working with her and sharing and learning from her in so many beautiful ways, that moment, that meeting would change the course of my whole life. And I actually write about this in my book, Finding My Sovereign Voice with My Grandmother Elder, and how I walked away from the corporate life and gave up all of it to be able to find my own way, because many of us want to do that, but we just don't know how. And I found my way, and I wrote how I did it so that others could learn from me. And how this woman shared and showed me everything that I was doing, but in a feminine, beautiful, unaggressive, unintimidating way, where I felt like I had to take what I wanted, but I could be in balance with the relationship of who I'm working with or the situation that I'm in, and just stand in my authentic integrity and in my truth, in compassionate leadership. Still leadership, but just not from the way that I had been taught it. And so that took me on a path that then I read voraciously, and I'm a continuous learner. You know, rest of my life I will always learn. And the depth by which the knowledge came, yes, some by books, but also within. And she was the initiator of that. And she was the first of many Indigenous teachers and elders that I have that I truly respect. The second one that I met was one that shared women's empowerment with me, that taught me the true understanding of what alchemy was, in several respects, and not just in alchemy as in medicines, but alchemy of life. And just bringing me that leap of octave in my life, in my understanding and in my grasp for why I thirst for knowledge, and not just looking for it externally in an academic way, but understanding it from an internal vastness of the universe within. So that's kind of like the story. And as I talked about this, I've had the great fortune in my life to meet many indigenous teachers and one grandmother elder that I met at a ceremony called Stone Dance. She was sitting behind me, and one of the organizers, his name was Vincent, said, "Hey, did you see that a grandmother wants to speak with you?" And I'm like, "Okay." And I look over my shoulder and I didn't see anyone. I was like, "Okay, did he mean etherically?" And so he was saging the land, and he comes and he goes and walks in a circle, comes back to me, and he's like, "Did you go talk to her?" And I said, "Did you mean etherically?" And he was like, "No, silly. No, she's right over there. I hadn't turned around enough." And so I look and I see this beautiful, beautiful, frail woman, standing there, and she motions very slowly to come and to speak with her. And I go, and, you know, sometimes when we're checked out of our bodies, we do things automatically. And so I remember being just a bit checked out and, doing like I would do in corporate, "Hi, how are you? My name's Enolia, nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah." And then when I finally took pause, when I finally took my own breath, I realized that's not how you greet this woman. That's not how you greet this woman. And so I took pause, and then I recalibrated, and I was like, "Hello, Grandma." And then she smiled and looked at me, and she said, "Do you mind if I give you a blessing in your heart?" And I'm like, "I would love that." So she lays her hand across my chest, my heart, and she starts speaking the language of light. And I could feel my whole body tingling. I could feel my whole, I, I transcended just in that moment through her words, through the vibration of her words, through her touch, through all. And she finished. And I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God. That was the language of light. That was, and here I am, all excited and everything." And she goes, "Ah, so then you understand this language and you know who I am." And that's when I took pause and I was like, "Okay, no, I don't." And that's when it clicked. I needed to get out of the human aspect of ego and response and jumping up and down and everything else. And I needed to settle in and feel what this woman was bringing to me in her engagement of me. And I was like, "Are you like representation of the Holy Spirit?" And she was like, "No." And she was like, "But I do speak the language that which was of Mother Mary." And then she proceeds to talk to me, which I won't share everything, but she kept me by her side that whole weekend. And anything I could ask a question about, I found to ask. And she shared her knowledge of what she felt she could answer. And then in my engagement of saying goodbye and everything, I never saw her again. And I keep her with me. But it was only a few short weeks after that that my language of light started coming forward. And then that's when I realized that it was an initiation more than anything that I had encountered and didn't even know. And she saw in me things that I had no idea I was going to do. And she told me what I was going to be doing before I even knew what I was going to be doing. And I'm like, but how can you know this? How can you see that in me? I don't even like such and such, or I don't even do such and such. What do you mean I'm going to be doing this? And it just goes to show, Kathleen, that you don't know what you're going to do unless you open your heart to it. One of the things that we learn when we learn to walk consciously is that we then dare to make a different decision and usurp our pattern and actually want to entertain, well, where will life lead me if I stop doing right, 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 going right all the time? What would actually happen if I went left? And so I dared to go left. And what a journey it's been. So that's how I arrived at the language of light.
And you literally just took us on a journey with you to the language of light. And what was really coming through for me was that you saw the light in others, and then they were able to nurture and tend that flame within you, which enabled all of these heart connections and expansions. And then what else I'm hearing is just that softening. So we don't, when we leave the kind of alpha woman ego behind, we're not giving our power away. We're coming into our innate power as women, which is that alchemy, isn't it? We're taking all of that patriotism and all of those things that we learnt, and we alchemize it into what we do best, which is creativity and heart and love. Oh,
Mm.
what a gift. And so this brings me to my next question, the light language in quantum consciousness. Can you tell us a little bit about this bridge?
Yes, I can tell you a little bit about this. So, light language came through me, and I know how it made me feel. It's like Enolia stood aside and let the light language come through, and I was a vessel as it came through. It wasn't me doing light language. It wasn't me figuring it out, or I'm going to mimic somebody. No. So I think that the first thing I want to do is I want to define what the language of light means. And people say, "Oh, language of light, you're speaking in tongues." And I don't subscribe to the use of speaking in tongues the way that society defines it now. I do not, because they associate it with religious context. And to me, it is not within a religious context, no whatsoever. This isn't to say that's bad. This isn't to say that's good. I just say that's my take on it. And so when I define the language of light, and if I had to go back to a formal understanding of it, I would go to J.J. Hertek and how he describes it. And he describes it as a multidimensional vibrational system that transmits divine intelligence. He defines it as an encoded frequency, a geometry, and a sound that goes beyond human language. He defines it as activating dormant DNA codes and allowing for your higher consciousness to kick in. He defines his, he defines it as connecting the individual with higher realms. And we use higher realms as defined like the Elohim or Christ consciousness or interdimensional intelligence. But the bottom line is that the key principles of language of light are like sacred geometry. and in the forms of like the flower of life or Metatron's cube or fractal encodement, cosmic intelligence. And the reason we say sacred geometry is because the vibration of your words, if that was to be encapsulated by materialism like sand, you'll find that it arranges in a geometric shape based on the vibration that's coming through, right? So we understand that in physics, and we understand that in the physics of sound. So sacred geometry is a fundamental part of the language of light. We also understand that in harmonic resonance and the sound frequencies attuned to, they're attuned to divine codes. And that's what awakens our consciousness. That's why I could speak the language of light, and you may not understand a single word that I'm saying, but your consciousness does at a higher level, outside of the ego breaking down and understanding every single word that I'm saying and grasping what it means. At a higher level, you understand what's intuited behind, because all of us are telepathic beings, even though we don't execute it. But when we hear the resonance, our resonance rises to the occasion to embody it, embrace it, and comprehend it at that level. Light as information, higher dimensional beings communicate through packets of what? Light codes, information, resonance, sound. So we are higher dimensional beings. We're capable of all of those things. And so when we look at DNA as a receiver and the human genome, the bottom line can tune into the language of light, evolving towards enlightenment, which is what we all want to aspire to. So it's important in that respect. So, you know, that is what I like to define the language of light as we embark on that. And to me, that's not speaking in tongues.
Just I've received transmission of the language of light from you, and yeah, it's just the most beautiful wave washing over you. And so I would love to know if, as we close off this container today, you would um, share with all of us a transmission of light, would light language. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would. And before I do that, I want to just talk about a few of the key aspects of language of light that yes, I mentioned them, but I just want to make sure that we really have this understanding that language of light is a vibrational communication. And it's just a vibrational communication that transcends speech. It's encoded in light frequencies. It has the sacred symbols, and it has the tonal harmonics. And that those tonal harmonics activate the DNA. And it the exposure to it just can activate those spiritual codes within human DNA. And then that activation facilitates a higher consciousness. It brings forward an angelic and divine connection. And in bringing forward that angelic and divine connection, the higher dimensional beings can engage us because we're raising our vibration. So sacred geometry and sound manifests, and we see them in forms of like mandalas or mathematical sequences, like just being able to do Metatron's cube or the flower of life. You asked me a little bit earlier to talk about pi and how pi could be a portal. But when we talk about language of light and we talk about these mandalas and mathematical sequences that language manifests in forms of, right? Well, those forms are sacred. They're encodements. And if we're sharing frequencies of encodement of for higher level beings, and they're represented in a picturesque geometric shape, then that shape in and of itself is like a lock and key. I would attribute it to like the Matrix. Remember the key master in the Matrix? He was able to unlock a door and close a door, and unlock another door and unlock another door and unlock another door and close a door and close a door and close a door. Well, what do you think that sacred geometry is capable of doing? And to think, if we really understand that sacred geometry is not only just represented in shapes, but that our buildings are designed based on sacred geometry, our landscape is arranged in sacred geometries in some of our most major cities, and those landscapes and that layout of the sacred geometry in the way that they do it are on Mother Earth, and Mother Earth has portals and vortexes, right? That we can create based on the shape of what we've laid out, or that we can encapsulate because we know that we're over an energy center, and that we can amplify, or that we can house so that we can stand within it. And, I was doing some research with a friend of mine, and we were talking about stupors. And stupors is just like the sacred way that a particular a church has or not church, but I want to say a temple. A temple has the layers by which it's built. Well, if you look at the geometry of a mandala, and if you were to pull the geometry from the center portion all the way out, what would you have? You would have a stupor, right? Ah, and so now we're looking at it in a side view, a 3D view. And that stupor, or that geometric mandala, has a focal point, that center point, that steeple, that point. And if it's over the appropriate energy of the land, has a resonance, opens a door, unlocks a key within that building. And that's why we can walk into some temples and feel blown away by the energy, completely blown away. So, in saying all of this, the bottom line is that spiritual evolution is engaged with many aspects, and one of those being the language of light as an ascension process, as another way of attaining an enlightened state of being. And so, with that definition, I'll leave it there. And I will do just a bit of a transmission.
I, I just have. So I have another question I'd love to ask.
Okay.
Can we do the transmission right at the very end? Is that okay? So we can
Okay. No, no problem at all.
we'll do the
So then,
transition. Yeah, right at the very end. Just
yeah. So then, you know what?
full
I never
circle.
really got to your question. And I'll answer that question that you asked. And you asked, how does pi then represent an open portal? Because mathematics is a representation of sacred geometry. We can call it fractalization or fractal mathematics, right? But when I go through the iterations of drawing, let's say, the flower of life, do you know that the first thing I would do for that circle is take the square root of 1? And then for that second circle, take the square root of 2, square root 3, square root of 4, and encapsulate those circles. And then in having them overlap one another, okay, then I have that overlap with the viscous pieces where they overlap, right? And each overlapping circle is a mathematical can be a mathematical calculation. We could do it each by calculation, or there are various different ways to encapsulate depending on what fractalization you're creating. Are you creating Metatron's cube? Are you creating the flower of life? Okay, what are you creating? And then the the intersections that you have, the straight lines that you can draw through the viscous pieces that are aligned or through the radiuses that are aligned will bring forward the cubes, the platonic solids, et cetera, et cetera. So everything can be represented by mathematics. So if you were to map out pi, 3.721, blah, 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 guess what? It's going to come into a geometric shape. That shape can then hence be the portal, depending on where and how you align it.
And
So that was the answer to the question I wanted to get to.
thank you. Yes, no, we've still got so much more juiciness to unpack here. And so math for those who may have had bad experience with maths at high school or whatever, but ma can you tell me a little bit about your transmission of the sacred mathematics or your journey and what you do with it? I know you have a story, and also because mathematics is a language in itself, isn't it, of the universe?
It is the language of the universe, but remember, I always look at it that way. And I like Dan Winter, who's a physicist. His take on it is that no matter what we do, consciousness came first. Consciousness came first, and then we learned to map mathematics against consciousness to answer questions that we wanted in order to approach and in order to understand consciousness better. um to me, there is no science without metaphysics hand in hand, because science asks questions, mathematics asks questions, and we can theorize all we want, but the bottom line is that there's an experience that has to take place. And then until you experience it, theory to me doesn't mean anything. So, where's the quantum leap that we take? Where's that leap of octave that we take? And how do we take it? And how do we map it? And how do we characterize it? Whether it's physics, whether it's mathematics, no matter what it is, how do we engage that? And so I loved, and I'll just digress just a little bit. I always worked at it. It didn't come easy to me. It didn't come naturally to me. But because I had questions, I worked at it. I'm one of those anomalies because I love the arts just as much as I love the sciences, and I do the arts just as much as I do the sciences. And so I actually am one of those people who is a universalist. Like, I love a little bit of everything. I may not be an expert in any one particular thing, but I can definitely work through a full range of understanding. And what I don't understand, I do my homework. I research it. And as I was learning about consciousness, I wanted to understand how consciousness actually came to be. And I deep dove into understanding what Planck units were, that quantum unit that always is there that people refer to, and wanting to deep dive a little bit more into the understanding of what quantumness was as it pertains to consciousness. And I came across physicist Dan Winters, who talked about, he terms a coined term as Planck fire. And really, what he did is that he just dissected the act of how phase conjugation implodes, not explodes, but implodes. And when it implodes, the DNA's electric field is the phase conjugation, and it has a higher intelligence, and it has quantum coherence. And when it hits one another and implodes, the act of that implosion not only just creates a gravitational field, but it also creates consciousness. And to me, it was just like, aha, finally, somebody who's explained it enough that I get it. I get it. So that act of consciousness is taking place. It's like an implosion. It's like when I'm looking through my third eye, when I'm exploring consciousness, this boom, this implosion is taking place, and consciousness expands within me. And I finally get it. The act of what, and because everything has energy, it's not just happening within me, but it happens within the tools that I use. Like, let's say, crystal quartz, for example. Crystal quartz amplifies. Crystal quartz can hold information. And through his terms, he explained that that implosion is actually happening within the field of that crystal quartz, therefore amplifying and giving you another level, that leap of octave, that leap forward of expansion of consciousness, or allowing consciousness to reside within it. So all of these different things that we have this beautiful relationship in consciousness with, that's taking place. And that's like from a physics perspective, and we can look at this from a philosophy perspective and phenomenology and transcendental meditation. We can look at this so many different ways. So yeah, yeah, the beauty of this is that consciousness consciousness really is just so expansive, and it is the umbrella of everything. It is everything. And all of our works, all of our writings, all of everything we do, all goes towards this consciousness and the explanation of it and the access to it, and the ability to engage in it and come back with this beautiful knowledge from it, and this wisdom and understanding from it, having engaged it. It's a beautiful thing. And I love that language of light just makes me expand within it fully and act as a portal or a vessel through me to share out.
And you just you encapsulated the whole essence behind the cauldron of the quantum field, and what really drew me to create this is the quantum experience, is experiencing what it means, because I have an inquisitive mind like you, but I've read papers and done 10 years of research into the quantum and the physics and the entanglement, and it does not land in my body, and I felt like, why don't I get it? I'm working with this energy medicine, but I don't get it. But it's through the experience of sharing and people's own embodied wisdoms and teachings and stories and language, because we all have these different makeups that we receive information in different ways. And so the experiencing it, and like you just literally bridged the science and the mystery and married them together in this within this hour. It's just magic.
I want to say something to you. This is why I created Wombology. This is why, right here, right what's happening right now. Wombology is a platform where women's voices reign. We have the ability to lead the conversation. We don't have to own the conversation and block anyone out. Because I talk about women's leadership and women's voices reigning, does not say that I don't include men. Men have always had the opportunity to do so. When you study the masters, who are you studying? You're always studying men. Men are the one who are in this field. We have to learn how to have these conversations out loud without fear of making the mistake in the way that we're describing something passionately, or worried about, are we articulating that right? We have to have platforms by which we can share what we learn, and we can do it step by step by step, because it didn't come easy to me. I have a few different mentors, okay? And I've been studying with those mentors every week for more than a year. And what do we do to engage? We have the conversations where I'm able to articulate it back without the confidence, but I'm thinking that this is how I articulate it back. And then I practice having that back, and I practice having that back until I'm able to articulate my thought coherently. It's like a fractal, right? Discord until it organizes itself and then comes into this beautiful, beautiful resonance, this beautiful, beautiful geometry that is coherent, right? But we have to start off with all of it just a little bit everywhere, and we're putting the puzzle pieces together and we're coming together, and then we're able to articulate it. And you give us that platform also right here with the Cauldron of Quantum Consciousness. So, in order to have this conversation, we have to come together. We have to lead the conversation. We have to be unafraid to share, and sharing not because we want to share that we know it all, but sharing as we learn from one another and embrace one another, and then really execute what I call the trivium. First, we learn the grammar of what we're learning. Then we learn the logic of what we're learning. Then we are able to articulate and use the rhetoric of what we've learned, and we've laid the foundation. And that happens in every subject.
And it's such a deep honor for me to be a part of Wombology, and you invited me, and I was, oh my gosh, because co-creation is my favorite thing in the entire world. So everybody, I'm going to have the link below for Wombology so you can check it out. It's a membership platform as well. And my show is called Sisterhood Alchemy. So I will include the links below this interview. Now, before we get to your beautiful free gift, I just know so many of our audience will be wondering, well, how could what's a portal or pathway for me to come into learning light language myself? Do you have any kind of just open wisdoms on how people could go about finding their language of light or pathway?
So, first and foremost, is that the free gift that I'm offering is my meditation is called the Infinite Possibilities meditation. Um, and what it is light language. So, meditate with the light language that I give you in the meditation, because you have to surround yourself to that which you want to be like, right? So if you want to learn a sport, you engage in that sport and you engage with people who do that sport. Well, if you don't have someone who's speaking light language around you, use the meditation as that person that speaks the light language to embrace it. And then light language, when I learned it, I remember the first time I started speaking, you have to let go of conscientiousness. How do I sound? I sound like a baby, or it doesn't, I don't want people to think. You have to let go of the ego part of it. And I remember when it first started coming through me, it sounded like baby talk, and it's okay. Then I just talk baby talk. And I would be in the car by myself and I'd talk to myself in light language. And I just talk. Whatever sounds came out or what came out, whatever particular verbiages that came out. I won't say words, but for lack of better words that came out, I just let come out. And I just kept talking in it and talking in it and talking in it and talking in it. Every time I was in the car, I'd be talking to myself, which is perfectly normal now because usually people have a speaker in their ear, so they just think you're talking on the phone. So, I'm talking in it and talking in it. And then what ended up happening is that I was unafraid and didn't care what people thought. And then I just spoke. And in not caring what people thought, and I just spoke, and then every time I spoke, people would say, but I felt so good when you did that. It felt so, beautiful. I felt like I knew what you were saying. And I feel lighter. It raised my vibration. It this, it that. And then the intentionality behind it, I want to heal. So that which comes through me be healing. Let that which comes through me be uplifting. Let that which comes through me be inspiring. Let that which comes through me be initiating. And so, with that, that's how, and that's what I would leave people with in order to engage it. So, yeah.
What a beautiful invitation of just to soften in and trust. And I'm going to have all of these little steps for you in the free guidebook that comes at the end of the summit, everyone. So thank you all for being here. And as we close up, let us close up with this beautiful light language transmission from Enolia. Thank you, Grandmother Enolia, for all of these wisdoms, and just your embodied presence is such a transmission. So thank you so much. And now we get to receive.
Thank you. So, I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment and to take a deep breath in slowly and hold it at the top. And releasing it slowly and holding it at the bottom. And what we're doing is acknowledging the space in between. Breathing in slowly. Hold it and releasing it and hold it. Breathing normally, I ask you to hold on to my words. Utekanananiatara a oreanta. Iramononianchara aroreantori. Ienananiampara. Arorea aron. Ote chintrufu unte cantara. Arian chantori. Ite ramanania tantora. Antentere antori. Iram tantu antu chi cantopore canamanania catorro contenterea. Ete canamanania tacro chichi cananiata. Ete canamanania tacarena nonuria. Ice te truria. A orian chantara. Aronte inturi ikerano manenia tarraka tantuda acetentugera arorea arorea arorea. So allow yourself to sit in the energy for a moment. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes.